First thing let's talk about is Chris Rock. I posted this thing the other day, yesterday, or day before yesterday, about how Will Smith was in his ego, and his ego was the thing that prompted him to run up on stage and assault Chris Rock. And then I read through, there was hundreds of comments to that post, and I read through the comments, and a lot of people were saying that, Chris Rock is partially at fault. He should not have made the joke about alopecia that he made. And again, I want to talk about this from the 10,000 foot perspective, right? I don't want to get into moral judgment, what's right, what's wrong, but just kind of give some context into how I think about these kinds of things as it relates to us, okay? As the observers of these things playing out. So Chris Rock is probably one of the top 3 comedians in the world, meaning out of all of the stand-up comedians in the world, the most recognizable, the most identifiable comedians at the very upper echelon of that industry, Chris Rock would be one of them. If we can all agree with that, I believe, right? Why do we know Chris Rock's name and yet we don't know some random comedian's name who performed last night at the Laugh Factory in Los Angeles? Because Chris Rock has been performing for decades, but there are other comedians who've been performing for decades. But Chris Rock has a certain brand of humor, right? And some people love Chris Rock's brand of humor. Some people don't care for it very much. But we can't deny the fact that he's a very popular comedian because enough of us apparently resonate with his brand of humor. Okay? Chris Rock is not a politician. He doesn't work for the government. So as a private citizen, as a self-employed stand-up comedian who gets to choose whichever gigs he wants to do, he has a license to talk about whatever he wants to talk about, right? Some people may take offense to some of his material. Some people may think it's funny. Apparently, at the award ceremony, once he told his jokes, people were laughing. People were laughing, including Mr. Smith, initially, at least, was laughing at his joke. Now, I personally didn't care for the joke very much, but not necessarily because I had some sort of political conflict with him talking about certain people and whatnot. I just didn't think it was a funny joke, right? But regardless, when we get into this conversation around what kind of jokes certain comedians can make and not make, it's kind of an empty argument because, again, who are we to determine what kind of jokes anybody makes? If they're bold enough to get up on stage enough times and work their way up to being one of the top comedians in the world, right? They've done that because people have resonated with their brand of humor. And what I would say to somebody who has a problem with Chris Rock's materials, 2 things. Number 1, become a comedian and start telling the kinds of jokes that you think Chris Rock should tell and see if you can gain traction. And maybe, just maybe, it's not impossible, but just maybe, you may become a very popular comedian as well. And you will prove to all of us that these are the kind of jokes that all the comedians should be telling, not those kind of jokes. The other thing, if that's not possible for you for whatever reason, the other thing is you can just vote with your attention. Don't watch Chris Rock jokes, right? Whenever Chris Rock is being featured somewhere, turn the channel. Don't watch. Don't put yourself in a position to be offended or potentially offended by a comedian whose material you don't resonate with. And again, I like some of Chris Rock's stuff. I don't like a lot of his stuff, but I like some of it. I think he uses the N-word too much for my personal taste. But I'm not going to get into somebody's Instagram comments and say Chris Rock shouldn't use the N-word. That's what people apparently like when he uses that N-word, right? Who are we to say what he should and shouldn't use in his comedy? The second thing, or the third thing, is that these award shows are also not democracies. They're not government owned and operated shows. These are private entities, and they are showcasing the types of comedians and performers and entertainers that apparently, again, resonate with the amount of views that they either have been getting or they want to get for their show. We don't have to watch the show, okay? But a lot of these shows have been using very racy humor. If you ever watched Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes, what he says is 10 times worse than anything that Chris Rock said that night at the Oscars. So basically, these award shows are stand-up comedy shows that hand out medals to entertainers. That's basically what they are. And who makes the highlight reel at these shows? The presenters who people think are the funniest for whatever reason, whatever brand of humor that they're hiring them for. So anyway, all that to say, I don't want to make this a conversation about whether or not Chris Rock should have told a joke that you personally agreed with or didn't agree with, because that's not the ultimate point, okay? The ultimate point here of this little situation is how Will Smith reacted to the joke. And we could even make the argument that he wasn't even reacting to the joke. He was reacting to how his spouse was reacting to the joke. And by all measures, we could put his reaction, and this is not a personal attack on Will Smith. Right? I actually am a big Will Smith fan. But just based on what we all saw, we can put his reaction in the category of overreaction. He overreacted. He overreacted, right? You've overreacted before. I have overreacted before. We've all overreacted. If you're living life in the human body, then you have experienced overreacting. You know what that feels like. You're in an otherwise innocent situation. Something happens that you can't adapt to. You experience a change of expectation. You experience some demand. You experience some pressure being placed on you. And your reaction to it overshoots the mark. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say Will Smith overreacted. So then the question becomes, why did Will Smith overreact? Okay, it's the same reason why any of us overreact. It's because we have a lot of pent up distress. And there are all these think pieces now around, I read Will Smith's book and his relationship with his father and his, the August thing and the entanglement and all this stuff is pent up. And so he snapped. And of course, anybody can speculate about why anybody snaps. But here's the thing, right? When we snap, what that means is we are moving out of our normal sort of waking state, human awareness, and we're shifting over into our animalistic fight or flight state of awareness. And the first thing that happens when you experience the emotional reaction of distress, anger, sadness, fear, frustration, boredom, maniacal behavior, first thing that happens is the part of your brain that gives you the ability to step back and see the big picture and say, you know what, it's just a little joke. You know what, Chris Rock is my friend. You know, I'm not going to harm him. You know what, I'm at the Oscars. This could be the biggest night of my life. I'm not going to tarnish that. That part of the brain gets shut down by the stress chemistry. And everything gets rerouted to our reptilian brain, which gives us two options. You can run away, or you can go and fight the attacker, the danger. And so apparently, for whatever reason, Will Smith reached that point where he snapped and his brain gave him those two options. And the best idea that he could come up with in that moment, whether we agree with it or not, the best idea that he had was, I'm going to go up on stage and I'm going to assault Chris Rock, and I'm going to teach him a lesson to keep my wife's name out of your mouth. That was the best idea he could come up with in that moment. Okay. Now, why is this shocking to us? That's the better question. Why was that behavior shocking to us? Right? Because if you live in an urban area and you're driving down the street or you're in a parking lot somewhere and you see two guys getting into it, what do? You stop, you look for a second. No, one of those guys is having a bad day, and you keep it moving, right? It doesn't keep you up at night. It doesn't make you question all of humanity. So the reason why that moment stood out for all of us is because we are still bought into this idea that having a lot of money means that you should never have the type of reaction that Will Smith had. In other words, if you're rich and successful and wealthy, you should be so happy with your position and you should be so balanced mentally that you should never, ever even consider doing something as vile as Will Smith did at the award ceremony. So that, my friends, is a reflection of us. That's a reflection of you and me and anyone else who was shocked by what we saw. We still equate wealth with happiness, which is a delusion. And we're so deluded by that we are completely shocked when we see something that contradicts our version of reality. If I made as much money as Will Smith, then I should never want to do something like that. We don't think about it more than 5 minutes if we see it on the street. If you see two homeless guys scuffling, you don't think about it more than 2 or 3 minutes. But if it's someone like Will Smith, he should know better and he shouldn't. No, Will Smith is subject to the same chemical reaction that we have all been subject to in our life. Unfortunately, Will's reaction happened on the biggest stage in entertainment on the biggest night of his career. But guess what? Because he's Will Smith, because he's wealthy, because he's successful, because he's connected, he could go and sit back down and enjoy the rest of the show and then get up and accept his award for Best Actor and get a standing ovation. That's what wealth buys you. Wealth affords you that margin of error that's wider than the one that you and I are able to get in society. Because I guarantee you, if you go to your job tomorrow and you slap the crap out of your colleague, you're getting frog marched out of that office in handcuffs, and you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money in the court system. because you don't have that margin of error that Will Smith has. Now, there are all these motivational videos that Will Smith has, either done directly or has been a part of indirectly. And he has one where he says, "No one will ever outwork me. I am the hardest working man ever in show business. I will die on the treadmill before I let you outwork me." Everybody's seen that video. So Will Smith has and this is, again, undeniable. He's got an incredible work ethic. And maybe he's right. Maybe no one will outwork him in his industry. And that's great. But what does that equate to? That equates to, again, Will Smith commanding $20-30 million per movie, Will Smith becoming richer, becoming wealthier, becoming more famous, becoming more connected. We see that and we think, okay, I've got to adopt that Will Smith mentality. No one is going to outwork me at my accounting job. No one's going to outwork me on the field. No one's going to outwork me as a meditation teacher, whatever your thing is, right? I need to bring that same energy to my job so that, why? So that I can become more successful, because I equate success with happiness. I'm not anti-success, people. I'm pretty successful myself, okay? By all measures, I'm very successful. So don't get it twisted. This is not some sort of anti-success propaganda. But what I've been preaching for years is that we need to bring that same energy to our inner work. That's what Will Smith was lacking. His inner work game wasn't matching his external work approach. And that's why all that stress builds up and builds up and builds up to a boiling point where you snap. This got to go somewhere, right? So practices like meditation, practices like gratitude, practices like journaling and therapy and, all the things associated with inner work, what they do is they create an outlet for the stress that's already coming in, whether we like it or not, to go back out. So it gets processed in real time. And the way you know it's working is you become less and less reactive. Because here's the thing. It doesn't matter what your opinion is about what kind of jokes get told in your presence. You're not going to be able to control that. And if you can't control it, you are putting yourself on an emotional roller coaster. Because life is not going to adjust to your preferences. The only thing you can control is how you adapt, how you respond to the changes, to the demands, to the pressures. And you don't have the same margin of error as Will Smith has. So it's even more important for you listening to this and watching this to adopt that same energy that Will has put to his career to your inner work. One or two stress reactions here and there, your career's over. Your relationship's done. Your dynamic with your kids tainted indefinitely. So that's what's at stake. Every time we wake up in the morning, we have a responsibility to our relationships. We have a responsibility to our career. We have a responsibility to the dynamic that we have with our family to do everything that we can do to become adaptable to change. And if we're not doing that, if we're leaving that opportunity on the table, it's really just a matter of time before we have one of those kinds of reactions at the wrong time, in the wrong place. Everybody starts jumping to conclusions about what you were thinking and why it happened, and they're all offended. You have to apologize, right? Who's got time for that? Nobody's got time for that. Having to navigate all of that. I certainly don't have time for it. And I tell people, I'm not risky enough to not meditate. I meditate because I'm not that risky. I'm more risk averse than that. I like to hedge my bets in the direction of me being able to adapt to change versus me reacting to it in the wrong time and at the wrong place and not having that margin of error to be able to correct it. So when we see things like that happen, again, we can spend all of our energy and all of our time judging and, oh, you should have done this and should have said that. And you shouldn't joke about this and you should do that. And he needs to apologize. And where's his statement? Or we can look at our own life and we can say, you know what? I'm going to take a little assessment because I've been walking on the edge here in my own life. I've been skipping my own practices. I haven't opened up my own release valve. I need to double down on my own commitment to my inner work before I start talking crap about anybody else. Or I'm going to be in that situation. And I don't have the leeway that Will Smith has. No one's going to even hear about me. So that's our opportunity. That's our cautionary tale that we can use to remind ourselves of what's truly, truly important. We can try to change everybody else, or we can channel that energy into becoming the best version of ourselves. And here's the other thing. You're not going to get credit for the time that you spend becoming the better version of yourself. No one's going to clap for you. No one's going to ask about it. No one's going to care. They don't care until you crash the plane. No one cares about pilots until the plane crashes. Then we want to look at the history. Okay, how many hours did they have? And, was there any other accidents? And were they drinking? And was there an argument with their wife? And da-da-da. No one cares about all of that when the plane lands smoothly every time. They don't get credit for landing the plane smoothly every time. But the moment they crash, they're in front of the judge and the jury, and they're presumed guilty until they prove themselves to be innocent. We don't want to see ourselves in that situation. So when we look at this little situation with Will and Chris play out on YouTube and on television, every time we see that, we need to use that as a reminder. Hey, have I done my meditation today? Nope. Okay, let me sit down. Let me sit down. So I'm not going to be in that situation, because I guarantee you, if you don't have an outlet for the stress inside and that stuff is building up and building up, you're going to find yourself in your version of that situation. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but it will happen. It will happen. And you're not going to get half of the grace that a Will Smith or a Chris Rock or some other wealthy celebrity is able to get. All right, that's all I have to say about this. Thank you very much for watching. Appreciate your time and attention. If you all are ready to do your inner work, I have a community called the Happiness Insiders, which gives you a whole blueprint for cultivating that fulfillment within and creating the outlet for the stress to leave. There's a 108-day meditation challenge. There's a 108-day movement challenge. There are master classes on finding your purpose, accessing your potential, overcoming fear, etc., etc. So check that out. TheHappinessInsiders.com is in the link in the bio. Thank you very much. We'll see you next Tuesday.